Yeah, welcome everyone. Hello, Judith, Keith. Professor Nirmal, very good to see you back again. Welcome back. Welcome back. Simon, Srinamala, Sanyu, Christine. Yes, hello, Dilly and Duncan. Yes, hello, Oka. Hello, Oka. I wonder if I detect upon the countenance of our good old friend, Professor Nirmala, a certain relaxation, having retired from the busy life of a full-time heart surgeon.
Yes, indeed.
May
I'm
it bring
pretty,
you a blessing. May the retirement bring you a blessing.
yes, I'm enjoying my retirement. And today, by chance, there was a counseling in my college. So I got free from there earlier. So I thought
Hmm.
I would join your class as well.
You sorry, say that last bit again.
My class was scheduled to be
Hmm.
leaving, it finishes at around 5 o'clock in the evening here in Indian time.
Right.
But today there was counseling of the new students who were joining the course.
Okay, right.
So
You were
left us
involved
early.
in counseling them, is that right?
Yes, so
Yeah.
I came home early and then I thought my alert has reminded me of your class, so I just thought I'll attend.
Okay, very good. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, and hello, Jeremy.
Are you in London now or in Manchester?
I am in Manchester. I've been here for two years
Yes.
now.
So when you were moving to Manchester, I was there in your classes at that time when you were moving there.
Okay, that's right, because I actually moved here exactly two years ago, actually, from Totnes. Yeah. Okay, welcome, Fenny. So last time we were looking at in the Dhammapada, the Dandavaggo. I'm just going to share screen now. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I got the wrong one. Try again. Share screen, share. Right, so you should all be able to see the text of the Nandavaggo on screen. Is it correctly visible? Good, thank you. We were on verses 3 and 4, which are identical, save for the transposition of the na from the first line to the second between three and 4. So we've just, I think we pretty much finished it, but we'll just go through it briefly. So sukha kamani bhutani yodandena vihingsati attano sukhame sano pecha sunalabhate sukham. And we had this interesting discussion about whether sukha kamani bhutani is meant to be like a proposition or a sentence in its own right, or whether it's the object of the verb vihinsati. And it could, I've thought about it more and more. I've looked up several translations. It's linguistically, as a matter of pure linguistic analysis of that sentence, it is completely open. You could read it Sukhakamani Bhutani, full stop or colon. Proposition made. Bhutani beings generally are Sukhakamani, have a desire for happiness. That's the initial proposition. On the basis of that proposition, the writer then goes on to say, Yodandena vihingsati, whoever harms with a stick. Welcome, Judy. That is, whoever harms those people, harms such beings with a stick, then does not obtain happiness in the afterlife. That's perfectly valid, and also it's perfectly valid to say, I'll now recast the sentence to make it distinctively an object. Yo sukha kamani bhutani dandena vihingsati. Whoever harms happiness desiring creatures with a stick. Equally valid. I think the first one is much better because it makes the general proposition that all sentient life by its very nature is sukha kama, desires sukha, desires happiness. It's just my own personal feeling. I've seen several perfectly respectable translations that treat sukha kamani bhutani as the object of the verb vihingsati. So I say either is correct. The interpretation of treating sukha kamani bhutani as a separate proposition standing at the beginning of the verse, I think is a little more forceful. As a matter of Dhamma, is more forceful. All beings are happiness desirers. Therefore, if you hurt any being, then you bring unhappiness upon yourself. That's my own personal view. That it's, strictly speaking, with a language teacher's hat on, say either interpretation is equally valid. And vihingsati, I think I mentioned last time that there's the principle of ahimsa from the root hins, meaning just to cause hurt or harm, and himsa, and very well known the expression ahimsa, as Mahatma Gandhi used that as his real watchword, the principle of living your life with ahimsa, just meaning not causing hurt or harm generally, as the one guiding principle in life. Here we see it in verb form, hinsati, with the upasarga of the prefix vi. You will, as we know, this prefix vi is the separative prefix, away from, splitting, and it can often, when used in a verb expressing like force towards another, hinsati, jayati is another one. It can have the idea of a violent motion, a destructive motion addressed towards another person. So whoever by a stick dandena vihingsati causes harm. Dandena, of course, here is to be interpreted in a very, very, very broad sense. In fact, you could even leave out that word entirely, and it would make perfect sense. Yuvihingsati, whoever causes hurt or harm. Attano sukham esano, desiring or seeking. It's from the root. Have I explained it down here? Explained it somewhere. Oh, here we are. Yes, Marush ish ishati. Also, another form is ish. Another form of the present tense, not esati. That's a Pali variety, but in Sanskrit, ichati, wants, from which we have the word icha, meaning a desire. And I think the word icha, Professor Nirmal, I think I'm right in thinking that it's in saying that it's used in modern Hindu use with icha. Okay, right, yeah. So these are two forms of the present sentence, ichati, or in Pali, esati is allowed as well. So esano, it's a shortened form of esamano. So esano, desiring or wishing. Attano sukham. Attano in Sanskrit would be atmane or atmanaha, for oneself. In Pali that becomes attano. So sukham tano, happiness for oneself, esano, seeking. Pecha so nalabhate sukham. Pecha means having gone beyond. So he nalabhate sukham, does not obtain happiness. I'll just call attention here to the Atmanepada form there. Pali normally ignores the Atmanepada. There's the Parasmaipada and Atmanepada in Sanskrit. That's the transitive and the intransitive form. Normally, we would expect to see labhati in Pali, but in later poetry, it gets slightly more Sanskritized, and you find the Atmanepada. Yes, please, Simon.
Two questions about this one. The first is a general question about reflexive verbs like this. They're not dealt with in Perniola, so far as I can see, and Warder doesn't deal with them. It's kind of quite hard to find anything about them. Is there a reliable list somewhere of the conjugations? So that's the first bit. I mean, I've dug one up, but I'd like to know whether it's a regular one. The second one is, does it apply to anything that you can do to oneself? So in the line above it, for example, could we have vihingsate, as in one harms oneself? And the third point is that just a specific bit, that it just seems odd to say one gains for oneself, because gain would normally be for oneself. What else would it be? It would be kind of built-in reflexivity into the verb. So does Pali behave, does labhati behave a little bit different? It just means to get something out of it, and you'd have to say labhate to get something for oneself out of it.
Okay, I can't remember. I'm sure I must have done in the past, looked at the question of Atmanepada in Perniola. I can't offhand remember, but I'll double check there. I'll do make. For the broader question, right? To answer it really, you have to go back to Vedic. Yes, welcome, Abdul Mateen. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You have to go back to Vedic to look at the regular and orderly use of the Atmanepada. As even by the time of classical Sanskrit, the lines had become blurred, and in Pali, very blurred indeed. If you look, for example, okay, let's go back to Vedic. Just going to oops, share my iPad screen with you. Come on. There we are. Okay, is the iPad screen correctly shared? Okay. As some of you may know, I've been having difficulty from time to time getting my electronic pencil to work on the iPad screen. I now have ready behind me, you can't see it, but just out of sight, is my emergency manual backup in the form of a whiteboard. So I can bring that into service if necessary. So let's just look at the third person singular. Yeah, welcome, Teresa. Third person singular of a class 1 verb, which, as we know, in Sanskrit and Pali ends in ati. Gachati, yajati, pureti. The Atmanepada, which is the reflexive form, is in ate. So what's the essential difference? If you go back to Vedic times, it's the difference between a purely transitive action, the ati. It's called the parasmaipada, literally word for another. Parasmai for another. Parasmaipada, word for another. In other words, the action of the verb is going towards an object outside yourself. This atmanepada, the pada in this sense meaning word, atmane means to oneself. Atmanepada, the word for oneself. So it's an action directed towards oneself. You can see it in English with you have the word to dress. So a mother can dress a baby. That would be the parasmaipada, as the mother is doing something to the baby. Or you can get dressed. In other words, you're doing the act of dressing, but to and for yourself. And you can have a purely passive. The baby was dressed by its mother. There are various words like this. Wash. You can wash something, or something can be washed. That's passive. But the atmanepada, the reflexive, you have a wash. You're doing the washing, but you're doing it to yourself. This distinction was very carefully observed in Vedic, and it has survived to a very, very slight extent in Sanskrit. If you take the verb yaj, meaning to sacrifice, to perform a sacrifice, as we know, among the Hindus, the Brahmins will very often perform ritual sacrifices for a family or at the request of somebody. A Brahmin might be invited by a family to perform some ritual act for some important occasion, some important family occasion. If the Brahmin is performing that ritual act on behalf for somebody else, then you use the parasmaipada form, yajati. If, however, the Brahmin, as he will always do, he's then performing his own rituals for his own benefit, not for a third party, but for himself, then the form of the verb will be yajate. So we see yajati, the action of sacrificing being done to and for somebody else. Yajate, he's doing it for himself, so the benefit will come back to him. In Vedic, that distinction was fairly carefully observed. As time went on, the distinction became blurred, and you very often found verbs, there are numerous just that can be found used virtually indiscriminately. By the time of classical Sanskrit, and certainly by the time that, for example, the Bodhicharyavatara came to be written. For those who don't know, that's the text we're currently studying in our Sanskrit class. That distinction did get blurred. Now, for example, if you look up, let me just turn up. So, turn up an example for you. Okay. This now is a very good example. This is Monia Williams, and I've looked up the verb lub, meaning to get. And from it, we get the verbal noun labha, meaning gain, what you obtain. You see, class 1, labhati, and this capital A there, it just stands for atmanepada. And the form is, let me just turn the highlights off, they get in the way. So you see the form is labhate, labhate. If you go back to the Vedas, that's how you will find, because getting something, obtaining something, isn't it virtually always for oneself by its nature? Now look at this giveaway here. Ep also T is the abbreviated form, is in the epics. That's in the later literature and in classical literature, say from the Mahabharata onwards. You'll also find it used as a parasmaipada. So in other words, by the time of the epics, the distinction had been blurred. And also now I'm going to look at the verb I was just discussing, yaj. So this is there's the yaj to consecrate, hallow, offer. That's basically meaning to sacrifice. And you see class one, parasmaipada and atmanepada, P and the A. It's both. So yajati and yajate. He Oh, here we are, look. It's described here. Thank you, Moni Williams, you've supported me. The means the atmanepada form of one who makes an offering or a sacrifice on his own account. That's the atmanepada form. And the parasmaipada form is yajati, used with reference to the officiating priest. In other words, he's officiating at a ceremony for someone else. When you so these distinctions if a verb is always parasmaipada in Sanskrit, it will remain that. If it's always atmanepada, it will remain that. Sometimes the lines are blurred. But you do have the full conjugational pattern throughout both verbs in Sanskrit. In Pali, the lines have become really quite blurred. There is no regular, consistent, formal use of the atmanepada in Pali. It crops up from time to time. Simon, I'll have to check what Perniola has to say about it. And we'll have to revert on that one. It'll take a little time to read.
Thank you. In a way, it's a shame that it has become blurred, because when the suttas talk about yajati, it would be nice to know whether we're talking about something done on our own behalf or done for somebody else. But of course, what you're saying is that now we'll never know it, because it could have mutated and it could mean either.
I regret to have to say that that's right. As the languages have, particularly as classical Sanskrit or the epic Sanskrit has developed out of Vedic, and equally as Pali, what we now know as Pali, has developed out of a previous common ancestor. Certain distinctions that used to be made no longer are made. The loss of these distinguishing marks, normally a language compensates for it by building in other markers as well. But it's just unfortunate these old distinctions have been obliterated and blurred. I mean, in English we used to have a dative plural. And we used to have the full nominative, accusative, genitive, and dative. Does anyone know, actually, as a matter of fun, this is very fun, we do still retain one tiny ancient dative plural in English. And that's in the phrase, we can say in the old days, but we have the remnant from historical Anglo-Saxon in the olden days. So with that N of olden is in fact an ancient dative plural that has dropped out of regular English, but is preserved in this. I don't know whether that's the only phrase, but that's the remnant of an old dative plural. So a lot of these distinctions have been blurred, but then replaced by other markers. But when we get back to this distinction between parasmaipada and atmanepada, you're right, Simon. It is a distinction that has been lost, and unfortunately so. It means that the language has lost that element of subtlety. If you saw the parasmaipada versus atmanepada being used in Vedic, when you're reading the Rig Veda, for example, you know, because that's quite a clear marker whether it was an act directed towards another or towards oneself. But sadly, it has become lost. In Pali, you'll normally just see labhati, but occasionally, particularly in verse, you will see labhate. But the important thing to note is that in Pali, it's just become sporadic and inconsistent. Fortunately, it doesn't matter too much in reality. It's just the slight nuances has been lost.
It matters with regard to yajati in the sense that it raises the question of who we're directing the good karma to. Do we do good things for ourselves, or is the ulterior motive to benefit other beings? Is there any hint there?
Yeah, that's another point. It would have to be made express, whereas in Vedic times that it would have been the nuance would have been present in the form of the verb that you used, as in yajati yajate. I suppose it could be said that the person who composed this verse may have had some residual awareness. Labhate sukham, obtains happiness for himself, because you can, after all, obtain something in order to hand it on. So that would be more labhati rather than labhate.
They would be two little tiny points that push the interpretation back away from your sukha kamani bhutani, standing alone, labhate, gaining for oneself as opposed to just gaining, and the other one is attano, like oneself. So it's not just you'll get this, you'll get that. Normally it would be in the optative, wouldn't it? But this is specifically about of oneself, happiness seeking, and for oneself, what one will not gain.
So this what were you saying about the locative there? I didn't follow.
The attano in the second line, first word, second
yeah.
day, they're tiny little clues that would push the interpretation away from your new superior one, because they're saying that person won't get the gain for themselves, whereas normally it would be in the optative, like don't do it, or it should not be done.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Query whether that level of subtlety was present to the mind of the person who composed this verse. I'd hesitate to say that it wasn't, but we're adding another layer of subtlety here, which is all to the good. So, yeah, okay, yes. I mean, I do take your point. It could be one argument in favor of treating Sukha Kamani Bhutani as the object of Vihingsati. So, what appeared relatively straightforward, you see, we have kind of layer after layer of interpretation on it. So, Pecha Sona Labhate Sukham. Pecha, having gone beyond, means after death. So nalabhate sukham, he does not obtain sukha. Now this pecha, let me call up the iPad again. So I can hear a loud noise coming from behind somebody, as of many carts rumbling by. So okay, it was. Thank you very much, Abdul Mateen. Thank you. So picture, it's from our root e. Might not look it immediately, but picture is from the root e, meaning to go, very common root. Having gone would be itwa, just for example, as we have gum makes gantwa. The rule in Sanskrit is that if a verb has an upasarga, if it has a prefix, then you don't use the twa form, you just use ya instead of twa. That rule is very carefully observed in Sanskrit. It's a bit loose in Pali. You can either observe it or not observe it. For example, gum, to go, agam, same in Pali and Sanskrit, is to come. Gum, agam. How do you make the absolutive form? In Sanskrit, you can't say agantwa, not allowed in Sanskrit. You can say gantwa because there's no verbal prefix, just the pure root followed by twa. That's how you do it in Sanskrit. If it's a root gum plus prefix a, then you have to use ya instead. So agantwa would be bad Sanskrit. In Pali you could say it, in Sanskrit you can't. So agamya. And in Pali that just becomes agamma. So agamya is the only correct form in Sanskrit, whereas agamma, reflecting the Sanskrit agamya, and agantva are both correct in Pali. Now let's transpose this rule to pra-i. So pra means forth or beyond. Pra-i, to go forth, to go beyond. And it is one of the words meaning to die, as in English we say to pass away, to pass on. So in Sanskrit, the pra-i, which by Santi becomes pre, means one of the meanings is to go beyond in the sense of to die. So, for example, using the past participle, pra-ita, forth, go, and then the past participial ending becomes in Sanskrit then by Santi, the pra-ita becomes preta, means gone beyond. Another word, so also it can in a sense be used to mean a ghost or a spirit of the deceased. You have the bhuta and the preta. In fact, like in Hindi, you talk about bhoot pret, meaning the spirits of the deceased. Is that right, Professor Nirmali? Bhoot pret.
Exactly. But I will remember one more thing, that pratita itself is used in common Hindi even these days, and that means appears to be. Pratit hota hai. It appears to be like this.
Teat, did you say?
Pratit. Pratit, that means appears to be.
Pratita.
Yeah.
So, okay, right. Let me just check that up, and I'll be able to raise that next time. So pratita, with a prati, is that?
It's pratit.
Yeah.
So pratit hota hai, that means appears to be. It appears to be like this.
Okay, right. That's probably with the upasarga prati, is it? Okay, so that would be a different upasarga. That would be prati rather than pra.
Yeah.
But okay.
Prati.
Okay, so I think that's from it's the same root but a different prefix, a different upasarga. So
Yes,
prati rather than ta, rather than pra.
I know the word. I do not know the science behind that word.
Okay, right. So I think what we might be talking about a similar sounding, but in fact a different word. So anyway, here we have preta, meaning one who has gone beyond, and in Pali, that is peta. Now, as I've said, where you get a root with an upasarga, with a prefix, the absolutive form, the twa form, is equivalent to something kar, ho kar, ha kar in modern Hindi, having done something, ja kar, a kar. The twa form if it's got an upasarga, it has to be with a ya, not a twa. So you'd have to say, I'll give you the Sanskrit, pra I plus ya. You couldn't say pre twa, it wouldn't be allowed in Sanskrit. Now, another little rule is that if the root consists of a short vowel or ends in a short vowel, like I, shru, before the ya, you add a t. That's why it's itya. You insert a euphonic t. It's not. It doesn't have any grammatical function. It's purely euphonic. So instead of saying preya, you say preya, praitya. So praitya becomes then in Sanskrit, the a becomes e by Santi. So pretya means having gone beyond, after going beyond. So that pretya then in Pali becomes pecha. So praitya, pretya, Pali pecha. So you take the Sanskrit form, and by regular phonetic mutation into Pali, the pretya becomes pecha, and that accounts for our pecha here. So cha, having gone beyond, here it has the meaning of after death. Just as in English we would say after passing away, after passing over. So pitcha suina labhate sukham. And in verse 10.4, we are seeing it's exactly the same words, except that the na is transposed in 10.4. The na is transposed between the first line and the second, so it's expressing exactly the same thing, but negating a different verb. Otherwise, it's identical. So sukha kamani bhutani yudandena nahingsati. So then the V has missed out. As I say, it makes no difference to the meaning. Attano sukhame sano pecha sulabhate sukham. So if you do not harm happiness-seeking beings, then pecha, having gone beyond, meaning after death, that person labhate sukham, does obtain sukha. Did we have recitations of this verse at the previous? Did we do any recitals of it? I can see various heads shaking. Is there anyone who thinks we did do a recital of it? No. Okay. It looks as if we can have a couple of recitals then. So before we do that, any comments or queries about this verse?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please, Professor.
This attano word, does it indicate atta? Atta means the Buddha says anatta. Is it
yeah, it is exactly that same word. Let me just call up the iPad again. What's happened is in Sanskrit we have the the well-known the Atman.
Yes.
We discussed this briefly last time. The Atman is a masculine. It's a consonantal stem. In other words, the stem is Atman. You have Atmani, Atmane, Atmanah, and so on. So consonant stem. But because it's a masculine noun, the nominative singular form in Sanskrit, the Atman becomes Atma in the nominative form. That's what we talk about, Mahatma Gandhi, literally great soul, he of great soul. Now, by regular phonetic mutation, Atma becomes Atta in Pali. So the consonant cluster Tma just resolves to a double T in Pali. And as usual, Sanskrit is perfectly happy to have a long vowel before a consonant cluster. No problem for Sanskrit. Atma, prapta, and so on, prapt. But Pali doesn't like it. It shortens the vowel. That's where you get ta. And so it's a word of very wide meaning, particularly among the Hindus. You have your individual Atma, you have your Paramatma, the supreme Atma. It's a very wide subject. What the Buddha was teaching, this idea of a permanent fixed self, a permanent Atma, that was what the Buddha was saying. We'll know. And so that's where we get the doctrine of anatta, often translated as non-self. But that was specifically used as an answer to the traditional Hindu doctrines of the Paramatma, and the objective of the spiritual quest was, put it very, very simply and crudely, the merging of the individual self with the Paramatma, and as it were, going back and merging with your source. I'm conscious that I've grossly oversimplified, but very broadly speaking, that was the idea. So when the Buddha was talking about anatta, non-self, that was this concept of this permanent, everlasting individual self that he was talking about. Remember that as a completely distinct thing, this atta is also used as just the ordinary reflexive pronoun, oneself. So when it's used in that way, oh, I've hurt myself. No, I've gained something for myself. When it's used in that sense, it's just an ordinary word of the language, meaning apne aapko, you'd say in Hindi, oneself. So used in that sense, it has this different meanings, just like a grammatical word, a grammatical reflexive pronoun, which is how it's used here. Attano, sukham esano, seeking happiness, attano, for oneself. So this word is very regularly used in Pali in that sense, and is not to be taken as a negation of the anatta doctrine. So these two entirely distinct meanings of it. In fact, both in Sanskrit and in Pali, the word atma, atta, is used in this sense as well.
Thank you.
Right. So we could do recitation. Can start off with the Judith. You're first in my gallery. Would you like to recite for us?
Yes, that's so often. Sukakamani Bhutani Yolandena Vimasati Atano Sukame Sano Bakasona Labati Sukam.
Well, let's remember picture. Remember the C is just by pure convention. The C represents the ch sound. And here in the Devanagari, it's written as a double. That's the pecha, a double cha, pecha. So, Judith, I seem to recall that last week, or maybe the week before, you seem to have refined, you seem to have got yourself into the pure pronunciation, or very close to the pure pronunciation of the Ganges Valley, the birthplace of the Buddha, though slightly to the north of the valley.
Might be accidental.
You've slipped back a little bit into traditional English. Can you just say also a little bit more attention to the length of vowels? Sukhakamani bhutani. You can just say Sukhakamani bhutani.
Sukha Kamani Bhutani.
Right. Okay, that was a lot better. Because there are 2 points of difficulty here for the native English speaker. One is one is because in English we don't distinguish in b, b, the, and it's quite difficult for the English speaker to get that out. Though to the native, particularly the native Hindi speaker, they're completely different sounds. Also, another point of difficulty. So let's look at this. Where in English we have letters like a p and a k and a t before a vowel, the English speaker will tend to pronounce it with a little puff of breath, kamani, and the Hindi speaker, hang on, it's not kamani, it's kamani. So it's a distinction that's difficult for the English to make. To make that a pure ka sound. It was quite some time after I'd started studying Hindi at the age of whenever it was 20. It was quite some time before I was able to get it right. There was this puff of breath that as a native English speaker I wanted to push out. We can do it in English, but almost accidentally. If you say the word pin, you can hear a puff of breath, pin. If, however, you put an S in front of it and say spin, that's the correct one. That's the non-aspirate. Pin, but spin. So try to pronounce spin as if you're saying spin, and then it'll come out right. All these little tricks we can use. Okay, thank you then, Judith. We're round to you, Keith.
Sukakamani, Bhutani, Yodandena, Vihimsati, Attano Sukang Ezano, Pechasonar, Lapate Sukang.
Right, that was pretty good. What I'd like you to do is just pronounce. Sorry, I'm highlighting it now. Just pronounce this word again. Dandena. Dandena.
Dandena.
Right. We'll hear the authentic Hindi pronunciation in a few moments. But this is this distinction between the dental d. Let me enlarge this a bit. The dental d and the retroflex d. Because when in English, when we pronounce the t and the d sounds, the tip of the tongue is roughly halfway between the dental d and the retroflex d. Our tongue, the tip of the tongue, is about halfway between those 2 points for the English t. And the point is, when we pronounce the standard English t or d, the native, say, Hindi speaker, I think virtually any of the modern languages of India, they will tend to hear that as a rather than a t. And that's why, unless they've learned, that's why I should say many Indian speakers of English will tend to have this typically da when speaking in English, simply because that's how they've heard the English sound. But we also have to make the effort that when we're saying a d or da or da, we have to make a bit of an effort not to put the tip of our tongue where it would be for our own sound, just a little bit forward towards the teeth for the dental. That's why it's called dental. The tip of the tongue is against the back of the teeth, and the retroflex, the tongue a little bit back. A word like this, danda, can be a bit of a tongue twister for the English speaker because you've got the dental d followed immediately by the retroflex d, and of course preceded by the nasal danda. So a little bit tricky for English speakers. Yes, please, Abdul Mateen.
But unfortunately, we have danda. Both da is used for stick in Pashto, in Hindi, in Urdu.
That's right. In fact, you still use that word, dund, don't you? A stick. Do you talk about dana to give somebody punishment to give stick? You can give frozen Abdul Mateen.
Yes. And Dandana means punishment, to give punishment.
Dandena. Here
Dana.
I pronounce it.
Okay, so in Pashto, we pronounce it with the long R, danda, would you?
No, we both, not only Pashto, Urdu, Pashto, Hindi, we use practically danda, both with D. First, in the first one, not not with the, but with the. But Pali in Sanskrit, here dandena. Dandena in
I
Pali and
see
Sanskrit.
what you mean. So you pronounce it with danda.
We use per stick danda practically on practical language.
Okay, right.
Either in Pashto, Punjabi, Hindi,
Right.
Urdu, in every language.
So would
But here is dandena. The first one is the
dandena, meaning with a stick. So for example, when you're writing it in Pashto, would you, or in Urdu, would you write the like that at the beginning?
Yeah, danda is there in beginning for using for stick danda.
Yeah. So what I mean is in the Arabic script, and then in Urdu you have the da, which in Devanagari is that, but the da with that little this sign on top of it is the equivalent of da.
James, are you writing?
What I
Sorry,
no,
I have been writing.
I
have been writing in various scripts, including the Arabic scripts. I was just pointing out that you have the da in the Arabic script and used for, and you write Pashto in the Arabic script, of course, don't you? That's the.
I mean, what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, with you, Abdul Mateen.
I mean, what practically we use for stick, the word is danda, like you have written here, danda, with the in the last alif is there.
Okay, with the last alif, the last long a, danda. Okay, so is that how you say it in Urdu as well, danda?
Is that how? No, there in Urdu is danda as well.
Okay.
Danda.
Right. Okay.
But in the Pali, dande, the first one is dal.
Okay. In Pali, it's just danda with a short a, and in Sanskrit, danda with a short a.
I think there is some mistake. I don't think in all the languages, Urdu, Punjabi, I think Hindi, Pashto, we all use danda, both with D. In the beginning D,
right.
and the end D, danda.
Okay, so
but I don't know how is there in Pali and Sanskrit, danda.
Okay, well, in Pali and Sanskrit, it starts with dental da, and then the retroflex and a short danda, and that's the one that makes the instrumental dandena. So that's in Pashto and Urdu. Professor Nirmal, in modern Hindi, do you say dand or danda?
See, what I understood is that you are trying to differentiate between the punishment and the object danda.
Yeah. Yes.
The object danda is spoken as retroflex D. It starts with retroflex D.
Right. Okay.
And the punishment word is which starts with dental D. That's the difference.
Okay, right. Okay, we follow. Okay, thanks very much. So I've got two raised hands. I'll start with Dilly first, and then I'll be round to you, Simon. Dilly, please.
Yeah.
Where are we? There we are.
Sorry, in Sinhala also we use danda as a stick and also as a punishment. We call the punishment, the reports of punishment, danda sangrahaya.
Okay, right. So that means in Sinhala you've retained the original pronunciation And you have retained both meanings, because literally,
Both meanings.
it
Yeah,
literally
danda
it means a
as
stick.
a stick also, we say dig danda, that means long danda, long stick.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. I should also mention, just thank you for that, Dilly, and I'll be right back to you, Simon. When you're writing the Devanagari script, you don't have full stops. You put this sign at the end of a line of verse and a double one at the end of the shloka. And what's the Sanskrit name for that? That is the danda. They call this the danda in Sanskrit, meaning a stick. We talk about our full stop. In Sanskrit, they talk about that danda, stick. Is that how you're still taught when you're learning Hindi at school? Is it still called the dand?
Yes, yes.
Okay, right. So there it is, just called the stick. And okay, Simon, back to you.
Long shot, but Victorian English, so think British Raj, he's got his dander up. Do you think that could be related? As in, he's aggressive, his passion, he's...
Oh, I got it. Yes, I'd forgotten that. Yeah, because we have quite a number of words that came into English via Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi. That could well be that. Yeah, I'll see if I can find more about that. Yeah. Not something you'd use in modern English, but maybe we could resurrect it. He's got his danda up. Right. So, well, actually, it's your turn now, Simon, to recite.
Sukha kamani bhutani yo dandena vihinsati attano sukhame sano pichasona labhate sukham.
Right. Okay, that was good. I'm just going to observe one point here for pecha or pecha. Remember that in Sanskrit, e and o are always long, whatever follows them. You never have a short e and o in Sanskrit, always long e and o. In Pali, the o and the e are by default, they are long. You can say so by default always long, but they will be shortened if followed by a consonant cluster or a double consonant. So here we have dandena, followed by a single consonant with vowels, so it's a long A, dandena, talking about specifically Pali now. But here, it's followed by a doubled consonant, and so the E is pronounced short, pecha. Remember, in Sanskrit, it's not pretya, but pretya, pronounced long E, pretya. In Pali, it's shortened, pecha. And we see the same phenomenon, for example, in the word metta. So we have this has the double T, an A followed by a double T. If it were a single T, it would be metta, metta, double T, metta. So remember that phenomenon exists in Pali, but not in Sanskrit. Okay, thank you, Simon. Right, Professor Nirmal, may we come round to you, please?
Okay. Sukh kamani bhutani yo dandena vihansati attano sukh me sano ichso na labhate sukhang.
That's very interesting. Can you just pronounce this word pecha again? Pecha.
Pecha.
Okay, right. As you were reciting it then, I slightly detected the influence of Sanskrit and Hindi coming in, and you were making it long.
Yes.
But yes, I detect.
Natural. It is not because I wanted to read it like this.
It's very, very interesting. In fact, I thought in advance, I wonder if Professor Nirmal is going to pronounce that in the Sanskrit and Hindi way, and it did come out a little bit like that. It's not terribly important. It's just a small thing to bear in mind.
I will improve.
Well, I think you're already in your general pronunciation as a native speaker. In fact, we have 4 people here who have a distinct advantage over the others. We have Professor Nirmala as the native Hindi speaker. We have Abdul Mateen as a native Pashto speaker, where the phonetics are broadly the same. And of course, we have Shri Nirmala and Dilli, both as native Sinhala speakers. You all have the advantage of being native speakers of languages that are directly descended from the Vedic and the Sanskrit.
One thing I have noticed that in Pali, we do not say this niggahit as ma. We do not close our lips when we are pronouncing niggahit.
Yes, okay.
When we are spelling out niggahit, then we have to keep our mouth open, lips open. So I will explain to you. Sukham.
Yeah.
Use my lips. Sukhang. I'm saying the same thing, but I am keeping my lips open.
Yeah.
When we say Sukhang, it is Pali. When we say Sukham, it is Sanskrit.
That, there's still a lot of argument among scholars and all over which is the correct pronunciation of it. I think because I tend to be, rightly or wrongly, I tend to be heavily drawn towards the more Sanskrit way of pronouncing it. And for example, look at this last word here. This is in the Devanagari script. You've got Sukham written with the Niggahita, which is otherwise called the Anuswara. In Sanskrit, if this were Sanskrit, you'd never see it written like that at the end of a line. You'd find the Anuswara only before another word beginning with a consonant in the same group of words. Then it's written as an Anuswara. But at the end of a line, that would be written with the full consonantal M, Sukham, and would be pronounced Sukham. Now, here's the big discussion. At the time of the Buddha, how was it pronounced? Would the speakers, the local Prakrit speakers, 2,500 years ago, living in the Ganges Valley, would they have said Sukham or Sukham? Of course, we won't actually know. I tend personally to take the view, and I cannot put it as more as a kind of a personal view, maybe even colored by my own personal preference. It was probably pronounced a bit closer to Sanskrit back in those days and Vedic. So I would tend to say Sukham, and I'd want to say Sukham. However, if you are a Thai, and of course many of us within the, predominantly within the Theravada strain of Buddhism, will have heard a lot of Thai chanting, equally Sinhalese monks chanting, where you tend to say Sukhang, Sukhang. So the answer is we won't actually know. I have seen, I was doing a chanting course one weekend for Pali, and our teacher was roundly telling me off. I was saying Sukham, and said, "This is Pali, not Sanskrit. Say Sukham." You see, some of you may know the name of Rachel Hall, one of our distinguished chanting teachers.
That is exactly what happened with me in my class. So my Pali teacher told me, no, you have to keep your lips open when you are saying Niggahet, and call this Niggahet when you are speaking Pali, and call this Anuswar when you are studying Sanskrit.
Okay, I've always tended to call it the Anuswara. The Niggahita is a phrase used by Pali grammarians rather than Anuswara. By the way, the word Anuswara just means the after sound, the following sound, and that's this the final M here, which just takes on the color. Either, as we've been discussing, in Sanskrit, at the end of a word group, just pronounced as a pure M, very much like.
They will write Ma with a halant.
And you'd write it, if this was Sanskrit, we'd write that as a full Sukham with a full consonantal M, the with the viram or virama underneath it. Can we hear it just now from Shri Nimala? This Nilapati Sukham, if a Sri Lankan monk were chanting that, would he say Sukhang or Sukham?
Sukhang.
Sukhang.
So you're both pronouncing with an aren't you?
Yeah.
You aren't
Sukhang.
putting your lips together, not Sukham, but
Sukhang.
Sukhang. Sukhang.
Sukhang.
Okay. I think maybe by pressures from all around me, I might have to abandon my Sanskritic approach. So if when we kick off next term, you see me saying Sukhang, okay, that's because I've let it mature in my mind.
It's like Etang Mangala Muttamang.
Yes.
Mangala Sutra. Etang Mangala Muttamang. We don't say Muttamam.
Yeah, okay then. I think I might have to allow myself to be persuaded after nearly 60 years of doing it this way. Let's see how an old man like me can change his habits. Of course we can. I'll try.
Yes, I can make a guess. I think it is because of the influence, because you are more into Mahayana Buddhism. And Mahayana Buddhism, as you know more than me, is more inclined towards Sanskrit.
Exactly so.
And we are Theravada people. I mean, I followed Theravada. So,
okay, fine.
And that is why the classical Pali I follow.
So actually, I do take your point. I do operate and belong to a sangha within the Theravada tradition. So if somebody were to ask me, yes, I follow the Theravada tradition. I do the Theravada pujas, the Theravada practice. But that's where I am on that particular level of my own path. When it comes to academic linguistics, though, I do manage to put that kind of in a separate box. And if something wants to be a particular way in Sanskrit, I'll pronounce it that way in Sanskrit. So I do take your point, Professor Nirmal, but I'm not actually a Mahayanist as such.
The Buddhist Society in London, I think, is Mahayana. I do not know exactly, but I feel as if it is Mahayana sect where they follow in Buddhist Society London.
The Buddhist Society in London, that is, I would say, that's very even and open. They are expressly non-sectarian, and they will equally have Theravadins, Mahayanists, Zen. So they're very wide open. They are expressly non-sectarian. Then, in fact, for the Buddhist Society, we regularly have
Yes.
Theravada forms and Mahayana Zen forms.
Yes, I agree with you.
Thank you, Oka.
I didn't know. It was because I've never visited that place when I was there in London.
Oh.
But I felt that is more Sanskrit-oriented type of place.
Interesting you should say that. I think the people who are in regular contact will see that it's wide open. And here I am currently giving these Buddhist Society course, Pali, then immediately followed by the Sanskrit one a little bit later, where we're doing Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, very much a Mahayana text. So there we are. I think it's just I've been such a keen linguist all my life that my own, what I personally follow in my own practice is a separate thing from when I'm examining language. What is the correct form to say? But I think I'm going to be persuaded by all you good people. I think I'm going to go on now. Etamangala muttamang. But feel slightly guilty as I do it and have to give an explanation. There we are. That's mere personal stuff. So who's next then? So Srinimala, I think you were next. So unmute Srinimala. There we are.
What happened? Sukakame Sukakamani bhutani yodandena vihimsati attano sukamesano pechaso labhate sukam.
That was very nice with the, can you just say this first pada again? Sukakamani bhutani.
Sukakamani bhutani.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Okay. Thank you, Srinamala.
Thank you, sir.
Christine, we're round to you. Unmute, Christine. There we are.
Here we go. Here we go. Ready, steady. Sukakamani, Bhutani, Bhutani, Do Dandena Himsati. Atano, Suka Mizano, Itcha, So Nalabate Sukam.
Just do this. Sukame sano, sukame sano.
Sukame Sano.
Right. That the first time, oops, sorry, what have I just done here? Oops. What have I just done? Oops. There we are. That came out as a z sound, which very often in English an S between two vowels. But remember, Sanskrit and Pali do not have a z, so esano, esano.
Esano.
Right. Okay, so just say attano sukame sano.
Attano sukame sano.
Okay, that was perfect. Just one point I'll mention here. And this Niggahita Anuswara, this final m, where if we've got the same, we've got the sukam there written with the subdotted m, which is the sukam, which I'm highlighting in the Devanagari there. And here we've got sukam esano without the subdotted m. That is because, right, the rule in Sanskrit is that if you got a word ending in a m followed by a consonant, it's always written as the anuswara, Niggahita. If, however, it's followed by a vowel, then it's just an ordinary straight m. So look here, su, ka, me, let's say sukam esano, and that's the me of sukam esano, sukame sano. In Pali, that rule is sometimes followed and sometimes not. And whether it's followed or not tends to depend, in verse anyway, tends to depend on the meter, whether you want a long vowel or a short vowel. So here's sukamesano, the a, me, sa, short, long, long. You could have made it Niggahita and Uswaran sukang esano, which would be permissible in Pali, sukang esano, permissible in Pali, never permissible in Sanskrit, because if it ends in the m followed by a vowel, then the m stays as a pure m, and it carries on.
Might it be written as one word? Sukamesano.
Okay, you see, I've written it as one word here, and I've written it as two words here.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
The reason I have done that, I think I've explained before, just so it is absolutely clear. In the first box, I've written it as it would be written in the as it is written in the Devanagari script. So in the Devanagari script, we've got the sukame sano, and we have the syllable there, me. If you just look at what I've highlighted, that's just me. But that actually is the last sound of sukam and the first sound of the following word, sano. It is a peculiarity of the Devanagari script that they're all run together. If you can run words together, you do, which makes it sometimes rather difficult for the learner to know where one word ends and the next one begins. So I've written it like that in Devanagari because that's the way it's correctly pronounced, not sukam esano, but sukame sano. In this second box, what I've done is to reflect exactly the way the Devanagari script is. So Sukame Sano written as one word because it's written as one word in the Devanagari. Also, Sukhakamani. We could put a hyphen here, Sukhakamani, to show that it's a compound word. One whose sukha is kama, one who has a kama for sukha, one who desires happiness. In this first box, I've written it without a hyphen because in the Devanagari, you don't put the hyphens. You just write it Sukha Kamani, all as one word. And then down, of course, down in the bottom box, I separate out the words entirely. That difficulty exists for learners, and that's why I'm just going to call up a bit of the Bhagavad Gita that we're doing in the next session for Sanskrit. This is a text I downloaded actually from a source, a modern Indian source. And here you see, this is the first section of Devanagari is exactly how it's written correctly in the Devanagari. The second is with the words separated. So here, for example, Mama Apanudyat. In fact, if you separate the words out, it is Mama Apanudyat. So here it's separated. Mama Panudyat. You say Mama Panudyat, but here it's separated out in order to help the students. And here, Yet Shokam Shoshanam. Yet Shokam Uchoshanam. Look at it here. Yet Shokam Uchoshanam Indriyanam. Yet Shokam Uchoshanam Indriyanam is the correct way to write it in Devanagari with the words run together. This text at the bottom is printed for the benefit of learners, and so it's split up. The sandhi vigraha, literally the taking out of the sandhi. Yet shokam uchoshanam indriyanam. So you wouldn't actually write it like that, but it's done for the benefit of the students. So it's broadly the same kind of thing that I've done in my transliteration of the Pali. One would reflect exactly the way it's written in Devanagari, and equally the way that it would be written in the Burmese and Thai scripts as well, where they tend to run the words together. This particular text that I copied from was a text of the Bhagavad Gita done in India, but this was a particular edition done to assist Indian students to learn Sanskrit, which is why they've taken out done it. You see, Yet Shokam Uchoshanam, Yet Shokam Uchoshanam, done there just to assist students to divide up the words. Quite frequently done for students. Remember this word sandhi vigraha, taking out the sandhi.
Thank you. Thank you.
There we are then. So actually we've just gone beyond one now. So we'd better wind up. So what I'm going to do, you'll have received my message about a possible change to the way we do it because of other things that have come in. As soon as I can, it'll be within the next, certainly well before the start of next term. I'll be emailing you all just to either to tell you what the new arrangement will be, or to invite comment, who's able to do what. So what I will do then is bid you all peace and blessing, and hopefully see you all in September.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you, James.
Okay, so
James.
hang on, thank you. Let me just hang on to the stop time. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you all very much, and see you in due course. Do have a blessed summer. Thank you then. Thank you.
Take the last class of the
Bye.
session.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
I will be with you, inshallah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Inshallah. Inshallah. مع السلامة يا عبد المتين. Fi amanillah.
Very
Bye.
Yamanillah. Thank you
Bye,
so
Jane.
much. I will.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye, Jane.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.